Let's take a look at a hand from one of my favorite video bloggers, Jaman Burton, who flops the nut flush draw.
The LoJack villain from the last hand is now under the gun, and once again she limps into the pot, and again next to act, I raise to $40. This time holding ace-king of diamonds.
So we're playing 5, 10, no limit hold'em, under the gun limps, Jaman makes it 40. I would generally recommend making it 50 in this situation, just because I don't think that most people who limp from under the gun plan to fold to a raise, and ace-king of diamonds stands to be in excellent shape. So I think you can just get a little bit more money in the pot without looking all that suspicious. And assuming we're not raising the spot with all sorts of junk, we're just straight value raising for the most part in these scenarios. So I think you can just nudge a little bit more money in the pot, and I don't think your opponent's going to notice, and that's going to let you build a pot in position with a bit of an equity advantage.
Action returns to her, and she finds the call. Deja vu. On the flop of Jack of Diamonds, 7 of Diamonds, 4 of Hearts, she donks again, just like she did with the previous hand holding a flush draw. Her having another flush draw, though, would be quite hard since I'm holding the nut flush draw. But so be it. We obviously call her $50 donk bet.
So she goes for a 50 bet into the 100 pot, and obviously we're not folding, right? So the only options are to call or raise. I think raising is nice if you think your opponent's range on the Jack 7-4 board is going to be a lot of hands like a bad Jack and worse, but really they're probably not limping a whole lot of bad Jacks, right? So it's going to be stuff like Queen Jack, Jack 10, Jack 9, or maybe stuff like Ace 7, 9 7, 8 7, 7 6, maybe Ace 4. I think usually when most typical players lead, they usually either have a marginal made hand or some sort of draw. And if that's the case, if we raise the flop, bet the turn, and then jam the river, we're going to be able to get them off of a lot of those marginal made hands, and we're actually smashing all the draws. So if she does happen to have a flush draw, or even a straight draw and a diamond comes, and she makes a straight, we're going to end up winning a humongous pot. So if that's the read, I think raising is certainly viable. And if we do raise this and get re-raised, we can just not fold, right? That said, if you think your opponent is a little bit tricky and you think they lead with stuff like sets, which she could certainly have 7s or 4s, maybe even jacks, or 2 pair, although 2 pair is kind of unlikely, then maybe you want to be a little bit less inclined to raise. That said, in this spot, it's kind of hard to have the nuts. So when it's kind of hard to have the nuts, it's usually a pretty reasonable spot to raise it up with a decently wide range, because you're not going to get re-raised all that often.
The turn is where I really mess up. It's the 10 of spades. Our villain checks, and honestly, this should be an extremely easy check behind for me, even picking up additional equity and only holding ace high. Why, you ask? Well, let's see what happens when I do what I did, which is bet $150.
Slow down, slow down, slow down. Jaman thinks he should check it back here with a monster draw. Flush draw, gut shot, and 2 overcards. What I want to know is, do you think this is some sort of giant mistake? What would you have done in this spot? Take a second, think about it, and write it in the comment section below. Would you check it back on the turn? Would you bet $110? Would you bet $180 over pot? Or would you just rip your whole stack in? Take a second to think about it and write it in the comment section below. Before I tell you what I would do, click the like and subscribe button down below. Go back down there, click the buttons. I would appreciate it. All right, in this spot, I think it's actually not that big of a deal to put in a turn bet, because if you do bet and you do get raised, you can still continue. The times you really don't want to bet are when you bet, and if you get raised, you have to fold. But this draw is so premium to the point that we can continue against basically any raise. Now, if we do bet and she just rips it in, I'm not exactly sure how deep stacked we are, but if she rips it in, then it's way worse, right? That said, you still probably need to call it off because you beat all the draws. Whenever you beat all the draws, and you have outs even when you happen to be against a made hand, you just got to call it off. So look, I don't think this is as bad as Jaman thinks it is. I get that you typically do want to check back when you have showdown value. And we do have some, but at the same time, if your draw is so premium to the point you can bet and then call, I think betting's quite nice. Because that way when you bet, you have a lot of really strong made hands that you're not folding, a lot of really strong draws you're not folding, and then also some junky draws that you can bet and then fold to a raise. You do have to be careful betting your marginal draws in this spot, like, let's say, King 8 of diamonds if we have that. Because you don't really want to bet King 8 of diamonds and then fold it if you get raised, or Ace 8 of diamonds is probably another good example. Maybe Ace 6 of diamonds is a better example, where it doesn't have a gut shot, right? If you bet and get raised and you have to fold out a flush draw, that's usually a pretty bad result. So here you want to be betting stuff like gut shots. Like say you did have a hand like Ace 9 of hearts, I think ace nine of hearts is a great hand to bet the turn, because if you bet the turn and get raised, you can just let it go. So here I'd be betting good flush draws, junky gut shots, and then ace jack type hands and better. Anyway, Jaman does bet. Let's see what happens.
She pauses, then check raises me to $340. Luckily for me, her sizing was off. Had she check raised me to a larger size, I most likely would have been forced to fold a ton of equity before seeing the river. As is, my mistake only cost me $190, but it's still a big mistake.
So it's obviously terrible when you do get check raised, and when you do get check raised, it's usually going to be by a very strong made hand in most cash games that are not super duper high stakes. The sizing is not great from the opponent at all, because if Jaman has any draw, he's getting the right price to continue. Notice here though, if she made it 500, let's say she made it, that would be what, $150 more? Jaman would have to put in 350 to try to win something like 1,000. So is he going to realize 33% equity in position with the nut flush draw and a gut shot, even ignore the times he makes a pair? And the answer is yes. He has tons of outs in this situation, and when he does get there, he always has the nuts. So this is a spot where you're really not so concerned with getting raised, and you should not be folding out in this scenario. Now, if you bet 150 and she makes it 1,500 all in, then yeah, you should probably fold. But even then, I just wouldn't, because you beat some draws, and there's some logical draws for her to shove, like queen nine of diamonds, queen eight of diamonds, 8-6 of diamonds, stuff like that may opt to shove. Now, you may say in a live cash game, people don't make those shoves with those draws, and if that's the case, then sure, be more inclined to fold. But this is a spot where I think this is fine. Call, try to get there, and go from there.
We put the mistake behind us, make the call, and then pray we leapfrog whatever hand she currently has, because we're pretty sure she doesn't have a flush draw. It's most likely a set, or she turned two pair with something like Jack 10.
I completely agree with that.
The 5 of clubs on the river isn't what we're looking for, and we pretty quickly check behind when she checks.
Slow down, slow down, slow down. All right, she checks the river. Should we bluff? Will the opponent ever have a hand like ace jack, king jack, queen jack, weird queen 10, something like that, that would fold to a river shove? Pot's $875. I don't know how many chips she has here, but if the stacks are something like $1,500 behind, this might be a spot to consider putting in a bluff. Now, look, I would not bluff here. I don't think it's going to work all that often, because like Jaman said, I do think when she check raises kind of small out of position, she's mostly going to have strong made hands or maybe some high equity draws. So I don't think I would bluff here, but you have to be careful what you did. I'm just going to check and hope to lose, because there is sometimes merit in bluffing, especially when you are playing live cash games. If you can look and tell your opponent's kind of uncomfortable, or maybe they did go for a thin check raise for value / protection, you can make a chunky bet here and get them to fold out a lot of their hands. And if you can make them fold out 40, 50, 60, 80% of their range, then you're going to extract a huge amount of value in these situations where a lot of players do just let it check down and they lose the pot. So with ace king, I don't think you want to bluff, but you should certainly look for spots like this where you have weaker draws, and you should consider going for it.
I mean, we can still beat queen 9 of diamonds, maybe?
Maybe weird ace 9 of hearts? Probably not, though.
No luck. We muck our hand when she shows us a set of 4s.
All right, so she actually had a set of 4s. She led the flop small with a set of 4s. I think I even said most people don't lead small with super nut hands, although some people will, right? And if your opponent will be leading small with super nut hands like sets, definitely don't raise the flop. If they're going to check call the flop and then check raise on this actually super scary turn with a set that could now very easily be beat, you want to be less inclined to bet the turn, like Jaman said. If they're going to check the set on the river, definitely don't bluff. So this is a rough spot. I realize Jaman lost this hand. I think he's been getting a little bit hard on himself. It didn't go especially well. It could have gone way better if he just checks it back on the turn. But I think this hand played out okay, and if he did make a flush on the river, I bet he's going to get paid off for a lot of money. Tough luck this time, though, and he loses the pot. I actually have another video lined up for you that Jaman plays where, you know what, I'm not going to spoil it for you. He makes great video blogs. Go check out the next video I have lined up for you, also featuring Jaman Burton. Thanks to him for making these videos. Thanks to all the video bloggers out there who get in there, they battle it out, they make amazing content, and I appreciate them. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Again, click the like and subscribe button down below. I would appreciate that. Click the notification bell, and I will talk to all of you next time.